Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah,
Yeah, we can hear
Great.
you.
Hey, how are you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing okay. Still in the car, so it's not about don't make a lot of notes now. But
Okay.
so far, we're still waiting on more people. So I would say let's give it a couple of minutes and see how many people we have for today.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, guys, I think this is it for today. The people. So I would just say let's kick it off.
Cool.
Probably it's also due that we are moving the time slot, so maybe people were confused or there we have our friend David. Hi, David.
David's here.
Uh-oh. What have I
Hey,
gotten myself into now?
nice that you could join us.
Oh, me too. I'm having a weird computer problem, so I may have to return, but hopefully it'll work itself out.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, maybe any new people that do want to do a short intro, Anthony, maybe?
Sure. Well, I'm a web dev mainly. I work on Astro. I don't know if you heard of it. Have used a little bit of Go and I work on a little bit on a compiler. So yeah, about security, I know the basics. I'm still learning some, more advanced stuff. And I've been working with Randall. So yeah.
All right, thank you, and glad to see you joining this meeting. We actually had a couple of action points from the last meeting. One actually was on me and Randall. The idea that we were going to have a chat with Xavier from CodeQuill to see actually how we could tackle the topic of the Stack Overflow. That was also part of the scope that we wanted to help and improve. So actually, Randall and myself, we had the meeting with Xavier, and there were a couple of interesting outcomes that we could do, and we could have a collaboration basically with CodeQL. Randall, do you want to highlight a bit what the actual discussions were with Xavier? You guys
Randall,
can
I
still
can't.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't hear Randall.
No, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry, my sister walked in, so I stepped away for a second.
Okay. I was saying that we had a discussion with Xavier, and basically
Yes.
two ideas came out of it. The first one, if I remember by heart, because I'm in the car, that was actually that he said it would be ideal that, for example, we could create like a sort of skeleton apps, because one of the limitations of CodeQL is that it needs to be compilable, runnable, correct code, which most of the Stack Overflow snippets are actually not, right? So we thought of, okay, let's make basically some very simple templates where we could paste in those code snippets, so we are able to run it with CodeQL and see, if it detects a vulnerability. And I believe he also mentioned that could then also be an extension of the bug bounty program, right? That they also have going on with CodeQL.
Right.
Right. Let me see. Did I miss anything about that idea?
No, I have it right in front of me. If you'd like, I could read it, but yeah, no, you're right on the money. He also mentioned possibly using the most critical projects list that should be coming out of the critical projects working group as something of a base for what the program could entail.
Indeed. And let me think. Then there was also another idea that he had, or basically one of his colleagues already had some time ago. And that was also like making a browser extension that would also be able to verify code snippets when you're actually browsing sites like Stack Overflow, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So those were the two things actually, and what is maybe good to discuss here in this group, what we feel about it. Personally, I think like the first idea to create like a sort of skeleton tiny apps in different languages sounds actually quite interesting. Not only because we can use those those type of skeleton apps and the vulnerable code snippets to create like new labs, for example, in SIG for it. But also, if we do this properly and we collect all that metrics and that data, we actually can, build a sort of data set of like vulnerable code snippets and maybe correct code snippets, which can then also be. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish. I'll go after.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No. So my train of thought was, that would be awesome because, basically, if we have that type of data, right, of all those vulnerable code snippets, we basically can also help in like other tools that are out there to use those code snippets also as a benchmark, right? To further improve and further tune their capabilities as well. It's not only making CodeQL good, but other type of tools that are out there could also potentially use them. All those skeleton apps and that we then collect over time, right?
Right.
And I would say as a natural progression, then also using something like this and building this, for example, extension in the browser to check even more while you're browsing, while you're looking at certain code snippets, could be, in my opinion, also more easily doable in that case then.
Right on. What I was
go ahead.
What I was just gonna add to the compilable feature, Glenn, Anthony and I have been digging into this a little bit. So what CodeQL does is that it basically has a unified like AST that it converts to. I think that's what he meant by it needs to be compilable. In other words, it needs to be like the AST, like, because CodeQL actually runs on that AST that gets generated. So I think what he was trying to say is that the code needs to be like compilable to the AST.
Okay.
I mean, these things that you're talking about in terms of finding a way to create a pattern so that we can use tools to find where they're being used. I think that makes a lot of sense. I do want to make sure that we don't lose the original bubble that started us down this path, which was basically work with folks like Stack Overflow to stop the bleeding. In other words, not just find it where it already is, but stop it from getting in by changing the answers in these top vulnerable pieces, so that so that the top answers aren't the wrong answers.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that get discussed also, or is that
No.
being handled elsewhere?
No, I think you're right. So we had the discussion, and we saw indeed, like, yeah, we should do this. Only then, of course, the other implication arises, like, okay, but yeah, that means somebody has to review it and determine, right? So that's why we were looking more in a sort of automated way how we, actually could achieve this. So that's why we ended up digging into CodeQL and seeing if we could use an automated way of actually,
Well, wait a
achieving
minute,
the goal.
of automatically determining if something is vulnerable?
Yes.
No, like if there's bad or Stack Overflow code.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that we have to do that part. There's already a number of papers that identify, here is known bad code in Stack Overflow. I would start there. I don't think we need to go hunting and finding every answer that's wrong.
No, we actually discussed this with Xavier, because this actually, believe it or not, David, this actually is something that they've thought about in the past. It's just a matter of like, the question has always been, how can they go about it? And how there's also certain like gotchas, if you will, to them doing that. But what they had originally thought was, if they can go maybe towards like some of the bigger answers that are most used that are vulnerable.
Yes.
And they actually do have a sample of where they did find one answer that was vulnerable, and they have, like, I think a blog post, if I'm not mistaken, that we have here in the Slack, if I'm not mistaken, that I can but anyway, the long story short is that's, I think, what they were looking, or like, it is something they've thought about. It's just a matter of like, how can we implement it? And yes, it wouldn't be every single answer. It would be like very popular answers that are incorrect.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I would start with the ones that have already been identified and try to work out what's the right answer and work with Stack Overflow and so on to correct it. And then, yes, absolutely, if we can use tools to find where it's been implemented wrongly, they use the wrong code, that's great. But I just am afraid that we'll keep fixing it forever, but not fix the source of the problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
But another thing that we discussed is that I think, at least I think this is fair discussion, is that I think there's also an educational opportunity, because I think that if you're just copying and pasting code from Stack Overflow, that's just never a good idea. And
Oh, no, stop right there. What you're talking about is programming.
correct.
No. What I mean is, if you're copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, for most developers, I would make an argument that that's what they mean by programming.
Fair.
We're not going to stop it.
Right.
It's
Okay.
not. Assuming we're going to stop it is never going to work. So we got to meet the developers where they are. I do agree with you that copying without knowing what you're doing is a bad idea, but I don't think we're going to. I think telling people don't do the thing that saves you time and money is ever going to work.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess what I was saying more is that, like, at least from my experience of helping a lot of people out in Gen 2, a lot of people like to describe symptoms. They don't actually describe problems. And then what I noticed a lot of times is that people give answers about how to essentially make the symptom stop persisting, but it doesn't really fix the problem. You could
Right.
turn off errors, and there you go, no more error.
Absolutely. Let me tell you the story about Flaw Finder and a fool at the tool is still a fool sometime, where a developer added comments and that fixed the vulnerabilities. by turning off the warnings without fixing anything. Yeah. But my worry is it sounds like we're actually in agreement here. We're not going to stop people from going to Stack Overflow and looking up the top answers. We just want to make sure that the top answers are as right as we can make them.
Right. Or what I was also suggesting with the educational bit is, I have been going through a lot of the educational documentation, much of which is yours, and SKF. But I also think that it would be good, and we also mentioned this to Xavier, to actually point people where like they could get like maybe another context to that answer, and maybe add more to that, because as I said, like a lot of things on Stack Overflow are not that they are incorrect. It's just the fact that like they don't have the whole situation. Like you're not painting a very good picture of what exactly you're doing. So,
right.
So,
this is probably the wrong group to have an anti-education discussion. I think we're all in agreement. Education good, linking to the education good. So yeah, if we can link off to here's the answer and here's more context to help you understand that and use it appropriately, I think that's great.
Yeah, like if you're going to use this, make sure you also consider these things.
Yeah, to the extent we can. That said, I do think people are going to copy and paste. So we ought to try to make it so that the copy paste has the context and also is right.
Right.
Well, what we could do, because this is also a thing that I wanted to do actually for all the labs that we have in SKF and all the code snippets, it's actually also providing the secure implementation. Now, there is two sides of this coin. One, if we would link in Stack Overflow to that resources with your material, the code snippet, right, with the fix, live environment where they can play and test and verify stuff, and get that context like Randall is saying, at least, we have one source, and if we, do a review and we update those code snippets and those fixes, right, that we provide that they probably will copy paste, at least we can update and maintain it in one source because we're all linking it, the education part, to that source of fixes. Well, now everything is pasted and copied in Stack Overflow, and it lives there forever as an archive. Till, somebody with superpowers come along and said, no, this is not correct.
Right.
Yeah. And clearly explaining why it's the correct one and the other one isn't is probably a critical for somebody to not undo the correction, as it were.
Right. Another thing we discussed is that we don't think that Stack Overflow would be very motivated to really do anything about this. So we have to kind of like find an external way, because I don't think Stack Overflow would give us super admin powers to adjust answers.
Now there we may actually have I have an idea, but I haven't pursued it. Somebody else may do. I've of course used Stack Overflow. Lots of people have, but I haven't given infinite number of answers before. However, my understanding, and please correct me someone if I'm wrong, is that if you provide enough answers and so on, you can get, I forgot what their scoring mechanism, but I'm going to call it karma. I don't know if that's their name for it. I think everybody knows what I mean. I think if you have a high level of karma, you actually can, sort the answers, at least in certain cases. So we might not need, we might be able to work within the Stack Overflow mechanisms, finding those people who are really motivated to give right answers and work with them, basically these highly trusted people.
I think that that editing privilege though is more for like if there was something that was missaid that like needs to be corrected. I think if we're going to add on to answers, I think that it could start getting highly political. Because that's what I've seen happen.
Yeah, possibly.
Like, "Oh, it could be done this way, but no, it should be done this way, but no, and yeah.
Right. Well, I don't think if something can be done one of two ways, but neither one is better than the other, I don't think we should get involved. It's when there's a top answer that's insecure and there's a better way that's secure that and where a lot of people are using the insecure way where we get involved.
Agreed.
So hopefully we can cut it to clear cases where it's bad, clearly bad to clearly good.
Would it be a good idea, or what would your opinions, David, be if because I know that CodeQL has like GitHub Actions, and I know that we're getting back to this whole, but what about if we use GitLab? And I haven't thought it that far, but just saying, I mean, theoretically, it would be somewhat easy to basically make a bunch of rules from like the top answers, and we could maybe even prototype this with something like JavaScript that's very easy to do, or like syntax is easy to write. All right, don't crucify. Yeah. But we could try it out, and we could try linking it, because I mean, SKF has a bunch of documentation about like how to do JavaScript stuff already too. So I think it'd just be easy to see how it goes and see, because then we can implement it in a GitHub action for someone that's just basic or just normal. They could just implement it, use it, and there you go.
I don't understand how that helps with the bad answers on Stack Overflow, though. It's basically still there. It's still getting copied in over and over again.
That is true. That doesn't
help. I think for education, that the goal for the education was to fix that. If we want to help get tools better, we can share that information with like the tools working group and get them to work on that.
Okay. All right. Just an idea.
Yeah. No, it's not a crazy idea. I think it has legs, but I think the goal of step one is to stop, step one, stop the bleeding.
Right.
And right now, every time somebody goes to Stack Overflow, they're bleeding. And you're right, in some cases, they might be on GitHub, and they might use a GitHub action that might look for it. But if it's an internal repo, or it's on GitLab, or in a million other places, that's not going to help. So I think it's still incumbent on us to try to figure out how to make it better. Maybe with step one is to see if anybody knows anybody at Stack Overflow.
I think Saul was going to take point on that because she had strong feelings about this.
Okay.
So she's going to take point in contacting them, but I don't think she's here today because she was in Dublin.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm looking forward to what she finds out then.
Yeah. But otherwise, the idea of Xavier would be to see how, this is just like as an open SSF thing, David, how we would be able to align, because they are interested in kind of what we can align with. Because, yeah, there are a lot of things I think in open SSF that Xavier thinks could potentially be of benefit for CodeQL, or can be done by CodeQL, I think is the
okay.
And I think that has to do with the bounties, and he's kind of in control of that. Like
sure.
He's the man in charge of the bounties, so that's also something that why he was interested in having a conversation there.
Right. I encourage thinking up ideas and making stuff happen. I just think we ought to, in order to make sure that we don't try to do 10,000 things, none of them well. If it's education or, teaching, and I think fixing Stack Overflow answers is relevant, we should work it. If it's more of a write some tools, great. Let's find a way to get that to happen. We may end up dumping it in a different working group in the OpenSSF, and that's just fine.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah. So it's much more of a swim lane thing. I'm not objecting to the idea at all.
So just to have a consensus so that we know what to tell Xavier. So should we wait till we hear from Saul on what she's able to find out from Stack Overflow, and then like figure out what we could do with CodeQL if there's not a way to move forward with Stack Overflow?
I don't want to get us stuck forever, but I think I would love to wait another week at least. Maybe send her a reminder.
Okay.
Hey, have you had any success? I mean, it's not just her. I mean, she may do her darndest, and they never return her calls.
Right.
So I don't want. It's unfair to stop the world because she suddenly gets overwhelmed or they don't answer her calls. But I do think we ought to at least make an honest try.
Okay, I will message her on Slack and I will find out for us. And
Okay.
if she is overloaded, I will draft an email and I will share it with you, and I will share it also with Glenn, and that way we could get on the same page of what we're going to be sending out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really much more of a start the discussion more than we want you to do. You've got some wrong answers that you've got some answers that are top answers that are insecure. We'd like to find a way to help you fix that.
Right. Fair. Okay. Sounds good. So
I don't think it needs to be long.
Fair. And if Saul hasn't sent anything out, I will make a comment that if she could send us what she had in mind sending.
Sure.
I will make that comment just so that we're all on the same page. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
she may have already sent something actually.
Yeah, she might have already sent something, but as I said, I'll find out. Either way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think according to our previous meeting, when we defined the scope of what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, it also came to the attention that we actually also for the other item about curating and obtaining new material, what is actually in scope of what we want to deliver in terms of secure development? I mean, is that web API related? Is it including mobile? Is it including, I don't know, desktop applications? Do we think we should also spend time on that to carve out the scope of our area where we want to offer secure software development education?
It may be beneficial if you were to break the education elements into the functional areas that software engineers exist within. If that is front-end development, there is a whole cadre of different focus areas within that. If it's back-end, those are different. And then there's obviously full stack, which will have elements of each of those together. So if you were to present it such as how most software engineers actually consider their work and break it down from there, that should allow you some flexibility in what is in scope, what is out of scope, and how deep into those different areas you pursue.
Yeah, and I think full stack you can cover with front and back. I would also add embedded, which is another whole area and isn't really covered in those by either front end or back end very well. And you might need to divide it up further. For example, usually I try to break things into programming languages because then you can point out specific constructs. Writing secure software in language X. And then you can pull out specific constructs and talk about things and make assumptions about what they know or don't know. I'm certainly open to other divisions.
I'm late on the notes, but I'm doing the notes. Here's the link to the notes if y'all would like to sign in.
Okay. I'm having some weird computer problem. I'm actually stuck, so I can see nothing. So
I'll sign you in, David.
Okay, thank you.
I'll sign Glenn in too.
Awesome. Yeah, but it's an excellent question. How do we divide this up? I do like.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to say we have, of course, year one and year two and further. So I would say maybe first, the focus on what is really burning in the world, right? Where we can add the most value and reach the most people in building secure software.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe then go in the second year or the third year, whatever, to go a bit more in the harder more complicated areas, because like embedded, you know, yes, it's also a bit of a burning topic, but ideally, but that's more my personal preference. I would then also to have like, you know, people to be able to flash, I don't know, their own ESP or hardware device, a simple thing that costs like $5 to also practice real time with things and try things out, right? And that takes, of course, some research and be able to, well, also build those labs for those things where they can practice, etc. So yeah, I do agree. I see also a need for that, but should it be in our first year goal or in our second year goal? Yeah, I think that's also important to think of, right, when we define a scope.
Yeah, I mean, if you stuck a gun to my head, I would say start with back end with some specific widely used programming languages, and then kind of expand from there. One thing that worries me on the front end is that really for so much of that stuff, you're talking about either JavaScript or, well, TypeScript, WebAssembly, running on a web client on a machine you can't possibly trust anyway. So why are you worrying about security? For the most part, it's anything you do that's security relevant is wrong. It's not quite true, but so much of this stuff really needs to be done in the back end and not the front end. Same for mobile apps. There's some things, although that's there's definitely things you need to do for security on mobile apps. And yes, a lot of people are writing mobile apps. But you have and there's definitely things you can do to make things insecure. But if you're depending on the mobile app doing all the security checks, boy, are you going to be surprised when you find out who owns their phones. It's not you.
Yep. Yeah, I must say, indeed, when we talk about mobile, I know a bit the MASCS, right? The Mobile Application Security Verification Standard. And indeed, it's more about, hey, if you're storing sensitive data, use ABC or do this, don't do that. So yeah, but again, indeed, you're right. Most of the things that do matter, they're hopefully all in the API backend, right? And then you have the backend stack again. So
yeah, if the front end folks stick in security checks, but they're doubled again in the back end, you're okay. That said, there are definitely things you can do in the front end that are disasters. Things like obviously security checks only in the front end, or slipping in private keys on the front end that are shared among users. Because boy, that's a great idea.
yeah, indeed, and token or public-private key generation based on predictable metrics and, well, activities that are not shielded from other applications. And then you go into the Android and iOS specifics. I mean,
it's news to me that password isn't a secure password. That's
in the enclave, right, of iOS. At least I know there are some good open source projects actually where you can practice these things, right? As well for Android as iOS. It's only, we need to have a capability then to simulate or, to also, again, give this possibility for them to in a safe environment to play with these things. But it is more, more doable, I would say, in the short term for a first year, MVP sort of say, right?
Yeah. Now, I mean, that's not to say that, for example, mobile applications, clearly there's a lot to do. And in particular, I think one of the problems on the mobile app space is not protecting yourself against the other apps. We're all one big happy family. No, you're not. But again, as I said, if somebody put a gun to my head, I would probably prioritize the back end, since those are That's where a lot of the checks end up needing to be, because usually that's where the trusted execution environment is.
Yeah, indeed. From top of my mind, I think we did make a list of programming languages that we wanted to cover. I think it was Java, Python, .NET Core, Rust, Go.
Quick
Node.js?
question.
You must have Node in there, don't you? Node with JavaScript or
Yes,
TypeScript?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I didn't hear that. Yeah, that's not a crazy starting list.
Quick question. So SKF is going to be the platform for all of this, right?
I don't know that that's so. I think step one is to figure out what's to do.
Because I know that we have I've been going through SKF and it's very impressive. Glenn's actually been helping me, and me and Anthony have been actually we're going to be picking up a lot of the work on there. But I know that your guide is on there because we've been reading it, your course, David.
Uh-huh. Whoops, I lost you there.
No, I said that your course is on there. It's on
Yeah, it's in there. And I haven't seen how Glenn tried to integrate the two. So sometime, Glenn, we ought to see if there's a better way to do things. But
this is what I'm getting at. So what we were going to do in SKF is we were going to overhaul like most of the front end, like me and a group of like 5 people. So I wonder if we could like take care of some stuff in the process. Because for example, I know that for red team or for testing, we're using the OSWAP testing guide, and that's, I think, a slightly out of date.
Okay.
So I mean, I think there's a lot that's already in there is all I'm saying. I just think that we should inventory maybe what we do already have on there, because OpenSSF is on there. So we can inventory what we have and then figure out what we're missing. Because I think honestly, for most of web applications, most of that is pretty taken care of. I would say. Mobile applications, I know that OSWAP has a specification, but I don't think it's in SKF yet.
No, in SKF for mobile, we only have the security requirements, the wizard, the knowledge base items, and stuff like that. And indeed, for web application and API, we have 70 labs for Python, 70 for Node.js, and 70 for Java. So we actually do have a lot. And I do agree with you, David, as well, that we need to have a... But I think also in this setup, in the training and education, I think we should also be able to further do more collaboration with you to extend actually your software foundation fundamentals course to add the missing categories, the missing items in there, right? To have like a full coverage, and that's why I was really keen on not trying to reinvent the wheel, but to really collaborate with all the other projects that are out there, like the testing guide for the offensive stuff, right? For you, for the secure development part, instead of trying to do all the things ourselves, I rather want to, reach out to the different other open source projects, contribute back to them as well, make their project more awesome, which make SKF as a platform more awesome. Which every project owns their own sort of responsibility and also their expertise, right? Which we can all then improve using the feedback and the people using for example, the SKF platform.
Right. Yeah, I am all for collaboration. I mean, obviously these two things were done independently. It shows. But that's okay. It's where we are, and I'm all for collaboration. My apology. Okay. Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with my computer, but I think it's time to reboot after this call.
You're not using Gentoo, are you?
No, I'm delighted to blame Mac OS.
But
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
no, I was gonna say I would like, I think this would be beneficial for everything, is I think if we could have a unified spot that where we have the or where one can go to consume the educational material, I really like that idea, because I feel like if not, you just get stuff everywhere, and I feel like to some degree that's already happening, and it gets really hard to really track, because if you don't know about the repo, then it kind of gets difficult to integrate or to consume.
Yeah, I'm not as quite as convinced that the one platform Uber alles. I actually don't think that's going to work for a variety of reasons. For one, I don't think SKF is SCORM compliant at all, and for a lot of organizations, that's the end. It's not SCORM. We're already done. We're not even talking to you. You're not relevant.
Fair point.
And SCORM has its own limitations. So the fundamentals course is SCORM compliant, and we're delivering on SCORM Connect with SCORM Connect right now. But SCORM creates all sorts of limitations. You're not going to be, for example, able to implement I have a bunch of running code and I'm going to go, compile it and check it out. That's just not something SCORM supports. SCORM thinks of things in terms of little modules of education and quizzes and tests. So just from that alone, I don't think you're going to have, at least for all cases, a single platform. But that said, we can bring it to a small set and try to make things work better where we can.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, I do believe that trying to do all possible platforms is a little hopeless. But it is weird. Like the little SK, the course, we're still supporting edX.
Right.
It costs more. That's totally weird. And yet, there are a lot of people who show up because it's on edX and don't go to the other one, even though the other one's free and there's no time limits. And just, I think it's overall, for that particular course, it's hard to see why people choose the edX course, but it's clear that people really do prefer the edX course in some circumstances. So, okay, that's a little surprising to me, but the LF training folks called it and said, hey, there are people who only do the edX and you'll get visibility you wouldn't get otherwise. So great, let's help people learn.
Right. I would also say maybe user interface might have something to do with it.
Possibly. I'm saying, I was just saying from the point of view of costs, it doesn't make any sense. But clearly there must be reasons people are choosing one or the other. So, okay, fine. We learn.
Let me ask you another question, David. If we were to be working on the user interface, and let's say we were to really polish it up, would it be better to build this maybe as something that's open-ended and can be consumed by other work groups or by other people that maybe down the line might want to make the SCORM course or something?
Well, I think step one is we need to figure out scope of courses, right? What's already out there and what needs to be done, right?
Okay.
And then from there, what's the scope? What's the best way to learn that material? Then choose a platform.
So for homework, maybe for myself and Anthony, that we could do is maybe bring an inventory to the next meeting of what we do have in SKF, and Glenn could possibly help with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And in fact, we have that list, that document that's supposed to list the various existing materials. It's really rough. It needs a cleanup, but Yes, let's create that little list of what's in SKF now and at least copy paste it into our document about what the materials that exist. Because that way, at least that information is easily accessible and won't be a mystery to anybody.
Fair. Got that in homework.
Yeah, and really, it doesn't need to be down to the nit and jot. Just at a top level, what are the key components and key information?
Fair. And I do think we have Node, Python, and I think we have something else that's escaping me for most of the labs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Java. Yeah.
Java, that's the one. I like to stay
Node, Java, and Python. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and you can always add other languages. You throw in a Ruby, throw in a this, throw in a that. But once you have some, it'll probably be a lot easier to add more with similar topics but different language.
Right on. All right, so we have that. Anything else?
Well, there was another thing actually, because if I remember correctly, there was also a sort of document, how you say it, published on the 14th in the USA. It's about the enhancing the security software supply chain through secure software development practices.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the one from the U.S. government?
Yeah, exactly, that one.
Yeah, I just recently read that. I read that. What was it? Yesterday. Yeah, yesterday myself. I didn't, and I never got a chance to review it at a time.
Okay, yeah, because actually today that's why I'm still in the car. I went to the Cyber Security Alliance, which also are looking into the the issue at hand, right? Providing education and training, and they also brought up that actually, indeed, this document was published, and they also mentioned that this will also be initiated here in Europe by our government as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to see if you guys were already aware of it, or maybe could share some insights.
I have opinions. I would have more opinions if I was allowed to view my my desktop window. But let's see here. So let me just say from memory. I mean, there's some. I wrote up something. I'm going to see if I can share that. I'll have to first dredge it up first. But I mean, the good news is that they're carrying and that sort of stuff, and that's all good. But there are definitely problems with the document. I mean, it's very much written for the U.S. government, assuming that all software development projects are very large projects with many people in them. Hey, make sure you review every line of code. I don't know how a one-person project does that. They want to review every. They want self-attestations from every supplier. And it's not entirely clear to me, but it sounds like they want the suppliers, not just the immediate, but all the transitive suppliers. That's going to be interesting. And earlier versions from documents from NIST said they weren't going to ask for that for the open source projects, but now they don't seem to be having that exception. The only solution they have is if somebody doesn't want to fill in the form, then they can get information from a trusted third party who has gone through FISMA or similar. So that'll be interesting. What is that form? An excellent question. They're going to try to spend the next 12 months to work out a form.
All right. Yes, I also heard a bit of the same noise actually from a couple of other people who said a sort of similar worry that they had, just like you just mentioned.
Yeah. Now you know what? I'm kind of, please forgive me. I'm kind of noodling this, so don't hold me too much to this. But you know, a lot of people have complained that, hey, I do this open source project, but where's the money I get paid if this is a side project? And the U.S. government wants all these forms filled out, you know, and it probably is going to take 8 to 10 hours to fill in a form. And I'm thinking, you know, this is a match made in heaven. You want me to fill in a form about my open source project? Great. I charge $100 an hour. It's going to take me 10 hours. Send me the check for $1,000. I'll fill in your form. And then we'll see how many U.S. government folks are serious. Because NASA actually is already doing this. I don't know if anybody is aware of that, but NASA's already been sending out forms saying, please fill this in to open source projects to whom they provide no funding. And the projects are going, I see your form. Why would I fill this out? And NASA says, because, you know, it's for the good of your country. And their response is, I'm French.
I saw
just complete disconnect between.
I saw that message on General a few months ago.
Okay, good. All right, you weren't the only one. Okay, I may be mudging up some of the details, but but hopefully I did a decent summary job.
Oh, you did. But no, what I'm talking about, there was another one though that was on Twitter about like some open source project got this like 24-page questionnaire from Epic Games about like their open source project. And they were like expecting a reply, and they had a deadline for when they wanted to like get the reply.
Yeah, now see, I realize that not everybody thinks this way, but in my viewpoint, if somebody wants you to do something, especially if they have a deadline, that's the time to begin the negotiation. Great. How much are you willing to pay? And if the answer is I want it for free, I wouldn't tell them pound sand. I would say no, thank you. I choose to do something else. If you want me to change my decision, let's talk cash.
Right.
I don't, I don't understand these organizations who think that they can ask for people to fill in forms for stuff where they're not paying. Sorry, that's not reasonable.
It's not. Now, let me ask you this. Is there an opportunity there from like a guidance or recommendation standpoint of what, like, for developers, as far as like this is what like you can do? Because some people might not think.
Well, this runs the danger of actually moving the subject of the discussion back to the purpose of this group, right? So I think that's actually a fabulous segue. So let's bring this back to, hey, do we have an education role related to these forms? I don't think it's at all crazy to have either a part of a course or maybe even a separate little course about, hey, you've been sent a request. How would I answer such a thing? Right. I could even imagine, since these things are all supposed to be about security primarily, so security and sustainment, I could easily see an OpenSSF role in helping folks fill that in. I mean, we do want projects to have good security behavior. I don't know how well their forms are going to end up being related to good security behavior, unfortunately.
You want to know something? What I've actually noticed from a lot of these forms that get circulated, that best practices badge program we have actually has a lot of the same questions.
Funny you should mention that. I noticed that as well, so thank you. I had toyed, I don't think it's close enough, but I had toyed with the idea of generating a form with some of the answers filled in based on the badges. That is still a possibility. The problem is there's not enough of a match, and I thought at first there's just one form, and then I was rudely awakened that in fact there isn't one form. But if the U.S. government actually works with industry and creates a standardized form for such requests, then and it's actually decent, then we could probably find a way to help. Here's my fear. So far, the U.S. government has essentially not been in any way interacting with industry to the best of my knowledge. I'd like to be mistaken. Please tell me I'm mistaken. But so far, I mean, I can tell you that I wasn't involved in creating those development, and I don't know anybody in industry who was.
I haven't actually seen any of that happen yet.
Yeah.
Either.
So if the U.S. government continues to gaze at its own navel and write docs without any consultation from the outside world, who write most of the software, I think that I don't know what will result, but I feel pretty confident that will be garbage.
Let me also say this, because this has come up twice in different working groups, that like the US has a way of imposing things. In other words, if it becomes a standard in the US, people kind of feel like it'll become a standard everywhere sooner or later.
Right. But the problem, but there's an if there. Usually that only works if the U.S. government does it and at least some U.S. companies buy into it. The U.S. government's actually pretty famous for things it says that didn't go anywhere because very, very few people in the industry supported it. So, right. But I think you're right to a certain extent. But I think that's because when they do it well, it's actually they can produce really great stuff.
Right.
So right now I'm worried about that lack of interaction, because, like, for example, that report that we just talked about, one of the other things it has is make sure your developer never has access to email or the internet.
What?
Yes. Yes, that's one of the requirements.
So we smoke signals?
No. The assumption is you're using your organization's internal network that isn't connected to the internet.
Fair.
Okay. Well, it's obviously the one true way to develop software, and I'm chuckling at this because I work in an organization that doesn't even have an internal network. Linux Foundation doesn't have an internal organizational network. What is that? So their assumptions are just, they really made sense in the 80s.
Right.
It's not the 80s.
No.
So that's and you know what? I think they've got some good ideas in there too. I think those problems like that can be resolved if they solve the fundamental problem of they've got to interact with industry. There can be disagreements, but there needs to be that interaction.
And that's not like our responsibility or anything, right?
Well, no. I mean, we're not responsible for what the U.S. government chooses to do. I do think it's reasonable to say, hey, I want to raise the flag somewhere, and I don't mean a nationalist flag. It's just, hey, I'm concerned. You seem to keep creating stuff without talking to industry. Shouldn't that stop and never ever happen again?
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly how to raise it. I know some people within the U.S. government, but I don't think they were involved in these, which is even weirder. So I don't know where some of these things are coming from.
I just say we hire Rage Against the Machine.
All right. So last call on education, because I know we got to wrap up, but
we're good. Glenn and I are actually going to have a meeting about front end tomorrow, which is why some of these questions came up. But yeah, we are planning on revamping that, and we would love also, David, I'm sure, to have your input so that we could, try to knock off as many things at once. Okay. Love to chat with you on that, and I don't know if I can do it tomorrow, unfortunately. No, it's fine. We'll be in touch. We're having our basically, I got 5 developers from Astro that are basically all interested in helping out with SKF. Awesome.
Okay, and I am very much interested in how we can make, the fundamentals course and SKF work better together, and how can we make different parts. I do think, for example, I do see that we're going to have multiple platforms indefinitely, if for no other reason than, there are a lot of folks who really only want the simple test, multiple guests. I can bring it into my arbitrary learning management system approach. And then there's the other, hey, I want to do interactive software development, get answers, hands-on code. I think as a result, you end up needing at least two platforms. And that's okay, but then the information needs to be consistent between them.
Fair.
Yes, indeed, and having one source, right, of the materials as well, because we don't want to make alterations or whatever. We just want to keep the original source as well intact, right?
Right. Right. And Glenn, speaking of which, I realize we're kind of running over, but I think this is an important point worth running over on. I've made some updates to the course. I don't know how you handle updates from the fundamentals course vis-a-vis SKF.
Very poorly. So that's why we need to.
I'm sorry, what?
Markdown? Is it in Markdown,
Yes,
David?
it's in Markdown.
It's in GitHub or where?
It's on GitHub. It's in Markdown. You can see every change. You can download the Markdown file. Heck, you could do that on a daily pull if you wanted to.
Maybe, Glenn, this is something we can talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. So let's.
I'd send you the link, but I can't. I'd send you the link, but I can't do it. But if you go to openssf.org and click on training, it includes a link to the GitHub repo.
I got it.
Yeah, and inside the repo is one big honking Markdown file.
Perfect.
And there's some weirdness in the Markdown file because the quizzes are there too. Not the big section tests, because those can't be public, but the internal little quizzes, knowledge quizzes, those are there in the edX format. So every once in a while you see some weird lists of questions that's in its own special format. But other than that, it's straight up Markdown.
We can do Markdown. Well, we're actually thinking about doing, because they're all Astro boys, is using Astro, which this is easy to integrate in Astro.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think there's probably more that we need to talk about so that we can improve the integration, but that's okay. Let's have that conversation.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All right.
and David, actually the meeting I have tomorrow with the guys of Randall is at this time now, tomorrow evening. So I can send you the invite. Maybe you can join, maybe not, but I will at least forward to you. And otherwise, we will just sync up another time. That's also fine.
Okay, that would be awesome. Yeah, dwheeler@linuxfoundation.org, just my usual work email address. That'd be fabulous.
Yeah. All right. I will send the invite. Maybe you can join. Otherwise, we will catch up with you later. That's also good.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, but definitely, regardless of that meeting tomorrow, we definitely need to work out how can we make integrations better.
Agreed.
All right, hey, thanks everybody.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
I'll see you tomorrow, Glenn.
Have a good one.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.